Features podcast. This is episode 188, and I am your host, Max Colville. Joining me once again is my co-host, Evan Crean. Hi, Evan.
Hey, Max. Good to be back. Missed you guys on the last show, the David Lynch conversation. I'm glad to be here, and let's talk about some movies.
Yeah, yeah, but it was funny. You were definitely missed. I mean, we had great guests, and we went through
We
David
did.
Lynch's films the best we could in the time we had, and I think it was a fun conversation. I enjoyed going a little bit deeper into Lynch's filmography than I had when he immediately passed away. So that was good, and it kind of like satiated my need to watch like more David Lynch movies right now. I have like I have like three more probably that I could watch, but I'll get to them and know that there's still David Lynch movies out there for me to watch.
Yeah, I remember our guest. He made a comment about that, like the like knowing that there was a finite number of David Lynch films now that he's passed, and like maybe holding one or two back now for a minute, so you can appreciate it the last one when you finally do see it.
Yeah, and you've been busy outside of recovering from an illness. You caught up with some of the films of 2025, right? And some of your most anticipated movies.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, I feel like I'm doing pretty good so far. I mean, we'll see. I've already seen 3 movies that were on my most anticipated movies list. I feel like that's not too shabby. I saw Love Hurts, the Ke Kwan action movie, which I'm sad to report is not very good, but I like him in it. He's a lot of fun, and I think if there's a reason to tune into the movie, it's really that there's just a bunch of wackadoo characters in it that I think were very fun. My co-hosts on Spoiler Piece didn't agree with me, but I think there's some real like it's one of those movies where you got a bunch of like wackadoo assassins and villains and things, and the villain in that movie is obsessed with boba, so he's drinking boba all the time, and I think that's quite funny. How obsessed he is with boba. I think that's a great quality in a villain to have. But yeah, it's all over the place. It's a disjointed kind of mess, and Ariana DeBose is not good in it either. It's not a good performance, not a well written character. But it does also feature a fun cameo by Property Brothers, so that's also something to look forward to. So yeah, I saw that. I saw a Cleaner, which I won't give away any details on that since I have yet to review it over on Spoiler Piece. But I'm glad that I caught that one, and I also saw Love Me, the sci-fi romance with Kristen Stewart and Steve Yeun, which also I think is a bit of a mixed bag, but I respect what it was trying to do. I think it has some really amazing special effects, and I love that the movie kind of, when you hear about it, right, you're like, okay, it's about a buoy and a satellite falling in love with each other, and I respect the kind of like arc of the story that they're trying to tell with the kind of different iterations of the relationship. Not to give too much away, but like you in the stills and things, you see like a live action version of them, but they don't start out that way, and so there's kind of an evolution of their characters, which I find it's kind of a fun ride to go on, and I think there are 2 really strong performances at the center of the movie, so I think that is a reason. If you're gonna watch it, it's for them because their charisma carries the movie a long way, and I think it makes up for some deficiencies in the writing and the overall story. But yeah, I was also kind of disappointed by that one. But hey, you can't win them all, right?
Yeah, if there's ever such a thing as like a movie red flag, it's a movie that debuts at Sundance and then disappears for a year and then gets distributed by a smaller label and without much fanfare. And this is like, big actress, Kristen Stewart. She normally can sell a movie. And that means something's up with this one. So I'm sorry that you didn't love it.
Yeah, you win some, you lose some, right? You gotta put yourself out there and take some chances and see the movies on your list.
Right, and we I think since the last time we recorded, the Super Bowl happened. There was a lot of movie trailers for upcoming films. Nothing really too surprising. There was look at the big blockbusters coming out this year, whether or not it's the new Jurassic World movie or some of the
Mm-hmm.
new Marvel vehicles like Thunderbolts and Fantastic Four trailer came out a few days before the Super Bowl. So
Saw that one.
yeah, a few trailers kind of made themselves known during the Super Bowl. I remember we used to talk about the Super Bowl trailers a little bit more, but the Super Bowl's come and gone now, and instead we're in the thick of award season. And
Mm-hmm.
Evan, I thought this year was supposed to be like up in the air, and there was no front runner, but according to recent results, it seems like there's one movie that's clearly preferred over all others.
Yeah, it seems like Honora is really cleaning up on the award circuit, huh?
Yeah, it's one of a lot of the precursors right now. The Producers Guild Award, the Writers Guild Award, the Directors Guild Award. Sean Baker took that home. It won the big Critics Choice Award. I guess the one that they're still waiting for is probably the Screen Actors Guild, which I Honora has some acclaimed performances outside of Mikey Madison, so. All right, so the ones that are nominated this year, yes, Honora is nominated and could win it. There's Honora, A Complete Unknown, Conclave, Emilia Perez, and Wicked. The BAFTAs had their award ceremony where Conclave won, I guess, Best British Film and Best Film. About what you would expect. Things going on, but I'm happy Conclave won something. I know you and I are both big fans of that.
Yeah. Trying to think of a fun way to say that we're like Conclave fans. Like some type of fun, nickname, but it's just not coming to me at the moment.
No. So we'll see. I think like the next episode we record is probably going to be our post Oscars episode because we're coming up on the ceremony very quickly.
Yeah. It's rapidly approaching.
There was news about one of the films that's going to play at the Cannes Film Festival this year. It seems like Wes Anderson is going to have his new film ready for late May, early June with Focus Features distributing. And that more than likely means it's going to show up at the Cannes Film Festival.
Yep. Yeah, it's true. His next movie titled The Phoenician Scheme, which I said this to Max off mic, but I'll say it on mic too, that Wes Anderson really knows how to come up with a pretentious sounding movie name.
And like it has like a spectacular cast like most of his movies do, but
Yes.
I think like I haven't really loved one of his movies since Grand Budapest. Like I hated the one about the newspaper. Was the French
I
Dispatch.
think I saw that one.
And Dial of Dogs is just fine. I can't even remember like the one that he had most recently. But
Oh, Asteroid City.
oh yeah,
I
that's
think
it.
is the name of it.
Yeah, Asteroid City. I didn't really care for that too much either. I know people were going. There were some people who were like absolutely going crazy for it, but that didn't do too much for me either. But
Yeah, I don't think I've seen any of his stuff since Grand Budapest Hotel, which I loved, by the way. And I can't remember if I talked with you about this, Max, on the show, but Wes Anderson is very hit or miss with me. I always appreciate his artistry in his movies, his attention to detail, his mise en scène is just, I think, unrivaled, but I often find his movies so flat emotionally that I've described watching them like watching him play with action figures in his basement.
no, I could see that. Yeah, that's a good description. But yeah, I wish the best. I mean, like for the movies
Yeah.
that I do enjoy of his, Grand Budapest, Moonrise Kingdom, even like Bottle Rocket. I like Rushmore.
Yeah, I like Rushmore.
I hope that this one is pretty good too.
Crossing my fingers as always when it comes to his movies.
And then finally, in upper news today, the first image of Christopher Nolan's new movie, the of adaptation of the Odyssey, came out with a picture of presumably lead star Matt Damon in his period appropriate attire. Not too
Mm-hmm.
much more is shown of the movie, but man, has there been a ton of casting announcements for that one coming through the trades like every day. Um, just
Yeah, it
like
looks like Tom Holland, Anne Hathaway, Zendaya, Robert Pattinson, Lupita Nyong'o, Charlize Theron. I'm just reading in this news story.
yeah, right, and spectacular cast. So we'll see what happens. Like, Evan, did you ever remember seeing the like TV miniseries version of the Odyssey? It came out in like the late '90s.
No, that's not one that I cross paths with. Although I'm reading in this article, apparently Armand Asante was in it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Uh, I think yeah, well, it came out when I was like 11 or 12, and I'm just like, I think I remember watching some of it and being like,
Did you?
wow, this is like spectacle, and like that's like my big uh appreciation of the Odyssey because it wasn't like something that I've ever like taken the time to read or explore any more than that. So
Yeah, I read it in college and was kind of like, fine, I guess. I don't know. I'm not someone that generally has a lot of appreciation for like ancient
classic
literature or
literature.
things. Yeah, that's not really my bag. I some I appreciate, but I think a lot of it honestly feels really dated. And even like stuff that I loved as a kid, like I loved Robert Louis Stevenson as a kid, but like going back and rereading like Treasure Island and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, the kind of like epistolary style, or the like kind of like I went here, then I did this, then I went here and did this. And I'm just like that's such a
Mm,
bland style of writing compared to someone like, if you read Arthur Conan Doyle and you've read Sherlock Holmes, it feels still very contemporary style of writing. Not like stiff and just very kind of like point A to point B kind of stuff. I find H.G. Wells is the same thing for me.
no, I agree. It's like you could definitely tell like how authors are writing and people who know what they're doing or can really make a world through their writing as opposed to others.
Apologies for the literary tangent, listeners.
Yeah, but this week we're gonna talk about a director, Evan, whose films are currently highlighted on the Criterion Channel, and one of her most famous films, Crossing the Lanty, is entering the Criterion Collection on a new physical 4K disc.
Mm-hmm.
That is director Joan Micklin Silver. And I think before I watched Crossing the Lancy, I had no idea of her as a director. And, this was a great opportunity to fill in a blind spot of mine.
Yeah, I was actually really excited when you suggested covering Joan Micklin Silver, because I had seen a couple of her films, Crossing Delancey, one of them, Hester Street, also, which we'll talk about, and loved both and thought they were incredible films. And Crossing Delancey kind of has like a personal significance to me too, because it's a movie that my wife and I have seen and talked about, and it's kind of like, when you're a couple and you have like some of your movies that you feel like warm and fuzzies about, this is definitely one of them. It's one of our movies, so I was very excited to talk about it.
Yeah, and she kind of came up into the world as a director when not many female directors were around. Like today, there's, you and I can name a few. You can name your Greta Gerwig, your Ava DuVernay. There's a few others.
Chloe Zhao,
Yeah, that you could certainly go through a list. Catherine Bigelow, and
yep,
name
Patty Jenkins.
yeah name successful women directors, and um, back
But
then that
yes,
just wasn't a thing.
exactly. Yeah, Joan Micklin Silver is definitely one of the trailblazers of cinema in terms of being out there and working as a woman director. So another good reason to talk about her and her films and her legacy.
Yeah, I think I was like most of her films, from the earliest came out in the mid '70s, and that was Hester Street, and she her films didn't necessarily get big budgets, weren't
Mm-hmm.
championed by Hollywood, kind of made their ways through ulterior means. Uh, I was reading a obituary about her life on RogerEbert.com. Critic Matt Zoller-Seitz penned it, and he was talking about how when she was making her way through the '70s, most of the films that were in demand were the type of genre movies like suspense or science fiction and fantasy. And having watched a few of her movies, those are obviously not genres that she really spent a lot of time
Mm-hmm.
in. It says here that while her films might have not been that extremely well known, they were big hits considering what they were financed for and what would end up making. He says that adjusted for inflation, 1988's Crossing Delancey made 125 million, which is only slightly less than the grosses of films like Get Out and Parasite.
Wow,
So
that's impressive.
yeah, it was a big hit. Or something like Chilly Scenes of Winter, another one of her movies, bombed when it was originally released in theaters with a different title and a tacked on happy ending. But when she got control of it and renamed it and fixed it, she it ended up earning 40 million and was licensed to like PBS, and PBS would play it all the time
Huh.
to boost viewer donations.
That's cool. Yeah, I was reading that she went through and was making a lot of like educational short films, so that kind of like makes sense that she had that PBS connection.
Right, and no, I've been excited to talk about her films. You know, let's start at the beginning. All right, so you told me you watched Hester Street, and it was a movie that I sadly didn't get to watch, but plan to. Why she's still featured on the Criterion Channel, and it's one of
Mm-hmm.
her earlier films. Um, can you tell us a little bit about Hester Street, Evan?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Hester Street, like Crossing Delancey, I think it's interesting that Joan Micklin Silver made a couple of really strong films about the Jewish experience, and Hester Street is also about the immigrant experience. It's about a family that immigrates to the U.S. and I believe like around turn of the century, and you have the husband who gets here first, and he's like Americanized himself, like um he is it's 1896. You know, as a Russian Jewish immigrant, he's been in the U.S. for a couple of years, and he's living over on Hester Street in New York City's Lower East Side. You know, well known kind of Jewish enclave. And you know, he's assimilated. His name is Yankel, but he goes by Jake. He's shaved off his beard. He's learned English. You know, he's very much like doing the American thing. He
Mm-hmm.
has the like a mistress that he's seeing, and his wife Gittel and their son Yosila come from Russia, and Gittel is played by Carol Kane. And the movie is about her kind of like arriving here and grappling with assimilation and the immigrant experience, and also, you know, kind of this push and pull for her of wanting to be attached to Jewish tradition and Jewish life, and him kind of eschewing that and saying, like, no, I just want to be an American. I don't want to have that connection. And
So is it,
so,
so you're saying Hester Street did The Brutalist years before The Brutalist?
yes, and much better because it actually like really digs in to immigration, assimilation. It's you know, in zooming into the this family, dealing with the issues of abuse and infidelity from the husband and Jake slash Yunkel, and he is a real jerk. And so it's like really tough seeing, Carol Kane's character arriving here and trying to learn English, but trying to keep that connection to her Jewishness. And, the movie is shot in black and white, which I think definitely adds a lot to the vibe of that, like, kind of turn of the century vibe. And it feels like it lends a little bit of an authenticity to it. It is shot in New York. It's not shot on Hester Street, because I was reading that apparently, like, at the time, Hester Street had a lot of, like, Spanish signage by that point when they were shooting this in the 70s that they couldn't, like, take down. So they shot, like, one of the surrounding streets to kind of give it that authenticity. And I think you really feel it in the film. It does feel believably like, turn of the century New York. So it's kind of, zoning in on the immigrant experience in New York and the Jewish immigrant experience. And I think Carol Kane is just phenomenal in this role. She's, I think she was nominated for an Oscar for this performance, and understandably, she's just incredible. Watching her go through this journey that ultimately has it's really friggin' heartbreaking. So she spends the movie, grappling with assimilation, and she actually ends up separating from her husband and marrying this other guy that's in the community who is more of a traditionalist. Like, he is traditionally, like, Jewish and wants to maintain that connection to Jewish life. And the kind of, like, resolution is that, like, they separate. The husband marries his mistress. She marries this other guy. But she does end up assimilating, kind of like we see them at the end, where, like, her son now goes by Joey and they're speaking English and they're kind of, like, walking down the street and they've assimilated. And it's kind of a real gut punch ending.
Yeah, because, like, I guess, like, maybe she was trying to, like, find a way that she could keep her heritage exactly how she wanted it, and right, she just was forced upon this role was forced upon her.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a really poignant movie, and I think that's why it resonated. Like, I think it was added to the Library of Congress's, like, influential films list in the early 2000s, and then a few years ago, I think in 2021, they did a 4K re-release of it, and I believe they showed it at Cannes. And I think originally it might have debuted at Cannes, like, when it first came out. I'm not 100% about that, but it would make sense. It's definitely this kind of, like, enduring story about the immigrant and specifically the Jewish experience. And so, yeah, it's great movie. I loved it. It was one that I actually didn't see until after Joan Micklin Silver had passed away back in 2020. I watched it after, because I was like, oh, I love Crossing Delancey, when I see one of her other movies I haven't seen, and this movie just totally blew me away.
Yeah, I'm looking it up now on IMDb a little bit, and yeah, the film looks quite good. Yeah, like you said, nominated for an Oscar. It's funny when you see movies like this, Evan, and you see, like, actors and actresses that you know, and you're like, oh, look, it's Carol Kane, and, like, she's like on Star Trek: Strange New Worlds now. Like,
Right, yeah, and she has she's very young in this too, and she's, like, very kind of, like, fresh faced, and, like, she's very conservative, like, especially in the beginning of the film, and how she dresses, and it's a very different Carol Kane than you're used to seeing.
Yeah, I'll definitely want to check that out. And
Yes.
chronologically, Between the Lines would be next, but I think I should give you a break and talk about Chilly Scenes of Winter.
Yeah, I'd love to hear about it.
Okay, so this was actually done 2 years afterward, Between the Lines, and like I alluded to before, the film was originally called Head Over Heels for its box office debut. And if you've ever seen the movie 500 Days of Summer, this
Yes.
reminds me a lot of that.
Okay, that's
And
funny.
yeah, this of course predates it quite a bit.
Mhm.
So there's this guy who works at this like Manhattan office or whatever, and I say Manhattan, what it looked like, but I guess it's in Utah, and
Mhm.
his name is Charles. He's played by John Hurd, and he one day walks into part of his office, and he runs into this woman named Laura, and it's like love at first sight for him. He cannot imagine his life without Laura. He needs to see her all the time and know whatever she's doing, and it's great at first. I mean, during their first interaction, she kind of lays the ground and
Mhm.
says, "I'm still married." And he's like, "Oh shit!" And he you can see it in his face, like, "Oh, I guess it's nice knowing you then." But then she's like, "We're separated," and that gives him an in to kind of begin a relationship with her. And it does this thing where it it, it kind of plays with the timeline a little bit. Like we've seen it in more modern films, and I'm sure
Mhm.
again in 500 Days of Summer, where he is there kind of narrating to the camera and telling like, "Oh, so you want to know who Laura is and my time with her and stuff like that," and like it kind of flashes back during that brief romance that they had before it shows you that ultimately he's not with Laura anymore, and she had decided to go back to her husband for uh, whatever reason, and he's kind of hanging on, hoping that she'll call him and they'll reconcile, or she'll leave her husband again. And I should say that Laura is played by Mary Beth Hurt, and you know I can see why this movie is interesting, but like similar to like how I bounced off of 500 Days of Summer, I feel like the lead man here is so pathetic, and maybe like that's what you're supposed to be thinking, but like he he can't get Laura out of his head. It seems like he's either like strung along or something. He becomes so
Mhm.
obsessed with her that uh her husband makes these A-frame houses,
Yeah.
and he decides that he's going to make a model A-frame so he can like imagine his life with Laura in it. And
That sounds kind of sad.
yeah, it's really pathetic. And it's not like he was this great guy, right? He held her up on a pedestal and thought like every move she made was perfect, and like that
Mhm.
was too much pressure for her. But also like he's very demanding of her. Like there's the one sequence where she's like, "Oh, I went to a doctor's appointment." And he's like, "Are you cheating on me?" And it's just like, "No,
Oh
I went to a
God.
doctor's appointment." And so it's hard to feel bad for him.
That's fair. I think it's interesting that John Hurd is in this, and he's also in Between the Lines. And I feel like in that movie, he's kind of playing a sad sack kind of lovelorn guy. So I'm wondering if there was maybe some like synergy that she was finding between the movies and being like, okay, I like John Hurt for this. Let's do something again with that kind of the quality, like handsome, sad sack, lovelorn guy.
Right, and like she also appearing in this movie was which it's real title that it goes by these days is Chilly Scenes of Winter. If you look it
Hmm.
up online, whether or not Criterion's already released this on Blu-ray, or you can of course watch it on the channel. But Peter Riegert, who also appears in Crossing Delancey, is in this film in a
Yeah,
much smaller part, but he appears in this one too.
it's funny. Yeah, she's got the like any director, you've got a couple actors
Yeah,
that you
your
enjoy working
favorites.
with. Yeah, you try them out in different projects. But yeah, I like John Hurt quite a bit. I've always felt like he was underrated as a character actor. I know like a lot of people in our age group like knew him as the dad in the Home Alone movies, but like I think he was really terrific, later in his career when he was on Sopranos. I thought he was just excellent there. And I've enjoyed seeing some of his earlier stuff. Like I remember seeing After Hours a number of years ago and seeing him and going, "Oh, okay, John Hurt, sweet. Oh, yeah, he's great in this."
Yeah. No, so I wish I could have liked the movie more. I
What do you
didn't
feel like
quite.
was not working for you?
I just don't like the conceit of it. Like I never got behind like caring for him and
Yeah,
like his plight.
that's fair.
I
I was
I
kind
was
of
like,
worried about that, honestly, at this movie when we were looking it up. I was like, that sounds like not a great recipe for like a protagonist.
right. And I mean, like, maybe that's the whole point, is to show like how miserable he is, and like ultimately he's supposed to be able to get back on his feet and choose for himself, and that is his happy ending. I mean, like I alluded to at the beginning when the movie first came out, it like the studio mandated that, tacked on a happy ending for the movie where I guess Laura does come back to him, and they have a relationship once again. Um, but I don't think that doesn't work for the scope of this movie. It kind of like rings false, because he needs
Yeah.
to go through like this personal growth of understanding that, even though he thought she was perfect, he needs to like move on. And
Yeah. I was going to say, like, it sounded like that emotion, that ending that the studio wanted didn't ring true emotionally. And you said the words, yeah, it rang false. So
yeah,
I could see why when she got her hands back on the movie, she changed it back to the original ending. Even if overall it's still not as satisfying of a story, it feels like logically it makes more sense to have him go through that rather than her come back to him.
yeah. All right, so we should circle back. Do you want to tell me a little bit about the new entry that you caught up with?
Yeah, sure. Between the lines. So I really wanted to see this because it takes place in Boston as a Boston person, and I liked the idea of seeing 1970s Boston. So that was a lot of fun. But yeah, this is about it's about an independent newspaper in Boston. It's modeled after the Boston Phoenix, a now defunct paper in Boston. And yeah, it's got quite the cast of characters. Honestly, I couldn't believe how stacked this cast was, especially with all these other character actors who I've seen in a million different things. But John Hurt is in this as well. He plays kind of the lead. We have Jeff Goldblum is in it. He's one of the other people at the paper. He's kind of like a wackadoo, music journalist. Bruno Kirby is in it. Very young, fresh-faced Bruno Kirby. Stephen Collins is in it. Joe Morton is in it. And a lot of other people like you've seen in other movies. Like I recognize Lane Smith. He plays the prosecutor in My Cousin Vinny. We got Mary Lou Henner is in it for like a scene. And yeah, it's all about the trials and tribulations of these like people who are working at this indie paper and just kind of barely scraping by and concerned about the fact that this guy wants to come and buy the paper and just disrupt any sense of normalcy and stability that they kind of have, even though it's still very chaotic at the office. So this movie, I think, starts out really strong. Like it is this great opening scene of the this guy, this newspaper guy who's going car by car in Copley and selling newspapers to people, and it's played by the actor Michael J. Pollard, and I think he's great. And I love the movie's use of space and the way that she kind of makes every space feel very claustrophobic, like the offices of the newspaper. Everyone feels like they're on top of each other, and the apartments in like Boston and Cambridge feels like there's just no room, and everybody's just like up in each other's business. And there's some kind of fun, wacky scenes of the characters, just especially with Jeff Goldblum. He like really at points is in full Jeff Goldblum mode. Like there's a scene where a guy comes in and he's whole thing is like he's one of those performance artists, but he like comes in and he's like he grabs a typewriter and like smashes it on the ground. He's like, "There you go, you've now seen my performance art." And so him and Jeff Goldblum get in this like war where they're like breaking shit in the office and like pretending it's performance art. So it's like Jeff Goldblum punches a hole in the wall and he's like, wall revealed. And then the other guy like smashes the coffee machine. He's like, "Coffee machine dead." So there's like some really funny moments in the movie, and there's like just like particularly I also think of this scene where Stephen Collins, if you might remember, he played the dad on that show Seventh Heaven, and he's been in a bunch of other things, but he picks up like a bass guitar at this bar where it's like the end of the night and the band has stopped playing, and then Jeff Goldblum hops on keyboard. And then Joe Morton comes in and starts like singing, and they're having this like impromptu jam session, and it's just so funny to see these like very disparate actors in this scene where they're all just kind of like jamming out and playing music. And so I think those are kind of reasons to see this movie. Like see Boston in the 70s if you're, a Boston person. Like it's fun to see like Copley and Harvard Square and Cambridge and all that stuff. And it's fun to see this really crazy cast of characters, people that went on to be, argue a lot more famous, some not. And it's just a bummer because it feels like it just gets kind of listless at a certain point. Like somewhere in the middle of the movie, it just kind of loses all of its momentum. And when the guy comes and like buys the paper, it just feels like the guy that they don't want to buy the paper, it feels just kind of like listless and anticlimactic. So I feel like that was kind of like a bummer to me.
Yeah, no, I think like some of the reasons why you say to watch it sound pretty compelling to me. Like when I saw like Jeff Goldblum was in this movie, I was like, that's crazy.
Yeah, he's definitely in full Jeff Goldblum mode.
Yeah, so that was Joan Micklin Silver's great films, Between the Lines. But really, what probably brought both of us to wanting to do this was 1988's Crossing Delancey, and with its joining the Criterion Collection now, and I guess I'll spill the beans that I really enjoyed it.
Oh, good. I've really been wondering what your thoughts were going to be on the movie.
Yeah, and Evan explained that his connection to the film already, but the movie follows Amy Irving, and she's a single Jewish woman who works at a bookstore. She has these dreams of like fiery romances, and like this author seems interested in her, and she's kind of like super excited about it, and she likes where her life is headed. But her grandmother says, you're getting older, and she connects her with a matchmaker, and she's connected with a guy who is a nice gentleman, but he owns a pickle shop.
Yeah, he's a pickle monger, Max. He's a pickle man.
Yeah, and she just can't see herself as the wife of the pickle man, and she kind of fights with what she ultimately wants to do, whether or not she wants to pursue this nice gentleman who also has his hands in pickles all day, or if she wants to kind of pursue this like dream romance with this author.
Yep. Yeah, it's a very push and pull kind of story with that. She's kind of fighting her heart and her head at various points throughout the movie.
Yeah, and like there's like some really like great scenes, Evan, and include in joining Amy Irving in the movie is the actress Rizal Bozic, who plays her grandmother and steals almost every scene she's in.
Yeah, she's a real scene stiller. And I read that this was like her only real like notable role that people knew her from. Like she was mostly a theater actress, but people knew her for this movie, understandably, because like you said, she's a real scene stealer. She's very funny. It just very much embodies the kind of like Nuji, Booby, the Jewish grandmother who's like, I love you, kid, but I know what's best for you, and you need to see this matchmaker, and you need to settle down and find a nice guy. Even though, like you said, Max, in the beginning, Izzy, Amy Irving's character, she's very happy with her life. She's a 30-something. She's got a great job at this awesome bookstore, and she's like, booking people there. This is, by the way, one of the sad things about this movie is that like it kind of exists in a world that doesn't exist anymore. Like this like big New York bookshop that has like a ton of employees and is like doing really like indie bookstore. And then, in the Lower East Side, in very Jewish, what used to be a very Jewish area, I think it's, a lot more more varied now, but it's kind of a bummer. But it really embodies this world and really transports you into this neighborhood. And I love that about it. And like Sam and his business that he, got from his father. And I love that people in the neighborhood talk about his father a lot and, how they connected with him. And yeah. Anyway, what else should we say about the movie? Like, is there anything else plot-wise you feel like we should mention, or we just talk more about what we think about it?
So on the disc, since I was able to see the disc early, there's a great documentary that's recorded recently with Amy Irving and Peter Riegert both appear and talk about their experiences with the film. And I didn't know that Amy Irving was married to Steven Spielberg at the time that she was filming this movie. They had reconciled and gotten back together for a period during that late 80s. And she I guess like he was filming something and the opportunity came up for her to appear in this movie, and she took the opportunity. And because she really felt passionate about the script, and that's another really strong piece of this movie is like everybody who jumped on board didn't jump on board because it was like this guaranteed blockbuster hit. That's because they had come across the script and really fell in love with it. I think that's another person that appears in the documentary is one of the script writers. I think it's Susan Sandler. She talks a little bit about putting it together.
Isn't the movie isn't it based on her play that she wrote?
Yes.
And like it's kind of based on her life, I think.
Yeah. So no, I think like another one of my favorite sequences in this movie, Evan, is this like impromptu sequence where this woman comes into this diner and starts singing a song in front of Amy Irving's character, and it's kind of like knocks her out of like what her decision should, like she should really think on this.
Yeah, it's been a little bit since I've seen it. And actually, honestly, I've been waiting to rewatch it until my copy of the Criterion came in, and which unfortunately comes in tomorrow, which is like really obnoxious. But I was like, I'm gonna wait to rewatch it because I want to watch the Criterion version of it. I don't remember that specific scene, which is bumming me out. But I do love that she wrestles with this. She has this back and forth about like whether she should be with Sam or not. Peter Riegert's character, like. It's not what she thought that she wanted initially. It's not where she saw her life going. But meeting him, spending time with him, and realizing that he's just like this really great guy who he wasn't even really like out there trying to like date. It's the whole thing is like the matchmaker was bothering him all the time. And like I love that it's like he's like, yeah, I humored her, and then she would show me other people, and I was like, nope, because he always had a thing for Izzy. And then one of the best lines in the movie is like he finally gets Izzy's picture, and he says, "This one, Mrs. Mandelbaum, I'll see." Really, really sweet that he's held the torch for her, but not like he's not like there like the creepy stalker guy. It's just like he's always really wanted to be with her, and then he gets the opportunity, and then he can be there and upend her kind of expectations for what she was hoping for in a relationship. She thinks that she wants, Anton, the author, and it turns out Anton's like a jerk. He doesn't want. He just wants to sleep with her. He doesn't want like a wife or a girlfriend. He wants an assistant that he can like sleep with like no real strings attached. And then she, realizes that And it's like, no, I have this really great guy, Sam, who wants to be with me and values me for my intellect. And turns out he has intellect too. He's not just a blue collar stiff. And I like that about this movie too, is that he's got his own intellect, his own intellectual interests. He's not, I believe the line in the movie says, I am not so provincial that as you think, or something like that. And so I
Yeah.
dig that about this movie in the kind of rom com canon. So often, like now we have all these Hallmark movies where it's like, oh, you go after the blue collar guy, the career woman goes after the blue collar guy in the hometown, and all of that, kind of trope. But he's a blue collar guy, but he's not that like traditional like expectation of like the kind of like blue collar stiff. Like he's also got his own things going on. He's not just a simple guy who's selling pickles.
Yeah, so there's some other things to look out for when you watch this movie. Assuming that you will watch this movie if you're listening to this episode, whether purchasing it from Criterion or watching it on the channel. Actually, I think I saw that it was available on YouTube too. If you look it up right now, I think Warner Brothers put some movies up in its backlog, and this was one of the ones that was included. So you can search for it on YouTube. But David Hyde Pierce from Frasier
Yep.
appears briefly in this movie. He's one of the fellow booksellers at the store. So keep your eye out for him. And
Mhm.
when one thing that I noticed when I was watching it is that this movie has a very memorable soundtrack.
It
uh,
absolutely does. One that I own
yeah.
on vinyl.
Yeah, it's like not entirely expected, but it's fun and memorable.
Yeah, it gets stuck in my head when I watch it or think about it, like the bum 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 bum, and then they like when your heart stops pounding,
Yeah.
pounding, pounding, pounding. Give me a call. I'm glad that
That,
you appreciated that in your viewing,
yes,
Max.
yes. You did a great job for not having seen it in a while.
Well, it's a favorite of mine, and me and Shauna, we both love it and think very fondly of it. So I know we're both really excited to watch our copy in Criterion, but I'm glad it didn't disappoint because I think I had recommended that you see it when we were both talking about it like a little while ago, like, and I'm glad that you saw it and it didn't disappoint.
No, I mean maybe it should have been a clue that I had recommended that we did Joan Micklin Silver. Probably because of the strength of that movie. I felt like I really enjoyed it, and I wanted to see what else she had in her filmography. And I'm glad we had this opportunity to talk about some of her films, and
Mhm.
hopefully other people can search them and look them up and find a new director that they never knew of.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I would say for sure you want to see Crossing Delancey and Hester Street. Between the Lines was kind of like, it was fun, but not less essential viewing. It sounds to me, you're saying similar things about Chilly Scenes of Winter, like maybe an interesting premise, but not necessarily like must see.
Yeah, I mean, like it depends where you are. If you're a person who really enjoyed like 500 Days of Summer and like those type of like protagonists don't really get on your nerves, like maybe you'll find something here that you enjoy as well.
Cool.
All right. So before we go into what we've been watching, let's pause for a little bit of podcast identification. As always, you can find our account on Blue Sky. It's the pictures or it's the pick pod, one of those two. You'll find us on Blue Sky. We have an Instagram account. We're on Letterboxd. Those are
Mhm.
all fantastic places to find us. It's the pictures at gmail.com. If you want to email us, give us your thoughts. And as always, if you give us a review on Apple or Spotify or even YouTube, thumbs up. It can help others find the show, and we can keep on doing this and sharing our movie thoughts with you. You can always look for me on Blue Sky and Letterboxd as well. I'm on those places under MH Colville or Max Colville or maxcolville.com. And Evan, where can they find you?
So every week I'm over on Spoiler Piece Theater, the weekly film podcast reviewing movies, but you can also find me on let's see, Threads, Blue Sky, Instagram, Letterboxd as Real Recon, and I'll also kind of piggybacking off what you were saying about reviews. I mean, also tell a friend. If you like the show, tell a friend. I think that's also a really valuable thing to recommend the show to someone who may not already be a listener. And that's something free that you can do that's really awesome and helps us out, helps us grow the show. So if you
All
dig
right,
us, tell a friend.
awesome. And then of course the newsletter. I've done a lot of lists lately, and I think I'm gonna do dig into some more articles coming up, Evan. Like I had pitched to you a few times now something on Robert Eggers, but received a review copy of Nosferatu in the mail,
Ooh.
and I think like I want to talk a little bit about Robert Eggers and his production design on the newsletter. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah, well, that's definitely a fertile topic, I think. His movies. It's definitely the strength of them is their technical prowess and their production design. So I'm sure that'll be a great article. Look forward to reading it.
All right, wonderful. And Evan, I had a quick little game for us to partake in. I actually heard this on a local radio show where they just try to guess a random sports player every
Mm-hmm.
day. And I'm going to give you some clues about a movie. And
I'm
I'm
glad
going
you're
to
not
see how
doing a sports player.
yeah, I'm going to see how long it takes you to get the movie. I'm sure you will get it.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay, so this movie has co-stars Candice Bergen.
Okay, Candice Bergen. Okay.
It was also directed by Richard Attenborough.
Huh. Okay. Hmm.
It it came out in 1982.
Guest stars Candice Bergen. Came out in 1982. Oh man, I'm struggling with this one. Let's see. What else you got for me?
It won 8 Oscars, including Best Picture.
This isn't Tootsie, is it?
No,
Damn. Let's see. Any other hints for me?
it stars Ben Kingsley.
Oh, Gandhi?
Yeah, that is correct.
Damn. Took me way too long to get that. Was I right? Was I right though that Tootsie came out around the same time?
I think maybe it came out in the 80s.
I thought like early 80s. Let's see.
Yeah, let's see when Tootsie came out, right?
Yeah, let's see. Tootsie came out 1982. Did you say this
All right,
movie was
same year.
1982?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So there was a logical reason, listeners, why I guessed Tootsie. Nice. I'm glad I got it though. That's fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I
I'm
thought that
liking
was
this game.
good, but hopefully we'll continue next time and see how many clues it takes you to get to the movie.
It's feeling a little bit like Win Ben Stein's money. Unfortunately, I don't have anything to award you.
All right, so now we're on to the what we've been watching section. Evan, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you've been watching?
Sure. Yeah. So most recently, I saw The Gorge, which I can't remember. I don't think I listed it on my movies I was looking forward to, my most anticipated movies, but it was definitely one I was curious about. It's the Apple TV movie with Miles Teller and Anya Taylor-Joy. It's kind of billed as more of like a sci-fi action movie about these two people who are guarding this mysterious gorge and trying to keep what's in the gorge from coming out. And it definitely is that. But I was really pleasantly surprised that it's also kind of a rom-com. It's about
Oh,
these two people who are supposed to be stationed on opposite sides of the gorge, connecting with each other, falling for each other, and then, blowing the lid off the whole conspiracy of like what's down in there and what's going on and why it's been all mysterious and covered up. So I had a blast with the gorge. I
oh wow.
thought it was, yeah, thought it was a lot of fun. I think Anya Taylor-Joy and Miles Teller have some great chemistry. I think they're a lot of fun together. I think it's kind of a fun action sci-fi movie. To me, it moved and it was a good time. Not the most like revolutionary story. I think some of the special effects look kind of chintzy, but overall, I just had a really good time with it. So yeah,
Are you surprised like this is part of like Apple's like deal to not put movies in theaters anymore? Like after all the bombs of last year, like this one, they were like, oh, we're okay with just having this on the service.
yeah, I could see why they wouldn't necessarily want to take the gamble and release this in a theater. I mean, I had fun. I would have seen it in a theater if I had the opportunity to see it. So I dug it. I think that the Gorge was pretty fun.
And that could be found on Apple TV Plus, right?
Yep, that's where you can watch it.
All right.
What
And
about
you
you? What have
watched
you seen?
Oh, all right.
You
What
want to
have
talk
I
about something
seen?
you've seen?
Sure. So I was presented with a short the other day. I was kind of emailed out of the blue. This short is gonna have its international premiere at South by Southwest, and it's directed by Lucy Davidson, who's a stop motion animator. And when I say it's an animated short and stop motion, that should pretty much give the clue that it's not going to be very long. It's a
Mm-hmm.
cute little 5-minute movie about three girlfriends who check in their baggage at the airport, but one of them is carrying a little bit more than the others. And it's a cute little short, you know. It shows a proof of concept about the stop motion, and you know it plays with this motif of not only the baggage that we carry as people, but also like the people in this movie are literal suitcases of baggage. so
It's a metaphor. I see where they're going with this.
yes, so it's pretty cute. The other thing I saw last night was the Saturday Night Live 50th anniversary celebration. It was
Mm-hmm.
3.5 hours
Damn.
of callbacks and sketches and musical performances. Uh, they had a lot of former SNL, um, what's the word for it? Not actors, but maybe cast members,
Yes.
and
Mm-hmm.
show up for the show, and as well as a few special guests like uh, Pedro Pascal and Bad Bunny and Sabrina Carpenter showed up in a few different sketches, including and then some of the vets of SNL as well. I think like one of my favorite sequences was they did a Black Jeopardy sketch, and Eddie Murphy played Tracy Morgan, and Tracy Morgan was standing next to him. and it
That's
just
really funny.
Eddie Murphy is able to like just do these like impersonations so well, and it's just like he absolutely nails Tracy Morgan.
That sounds amazing. I'm gonna have to check that out.
Yeah, I mean like there's a lot of sketches, and they like do they they some of the sketches are just kind of built out where like they're just trying to get as many people as possible into it, and like that kind of seems not great at times, but you know it's all for fun. And like some of the musical guests they have on were like Miley Cyrus and Paul Simon and Paul McCartney. So
Mm-hmm.
there's plenty of reasons to turn in, even if it was a little long. Evan, I also
Yes.
caught up with an older movie which I told you I was going to be watching, when that was the Sylvester Stallone, Wesley Snipes sci-fi action movie, Demolition Man.
Oh man, you finally saw it. I gotta hear what you think of this one, Max.
So I saw the Taco Bell version. And if you don't know what that means, I guess like internationally, no one knew what Taco Bell was at the time. So like they
Mm-hmm.
changed like all these things over to Pizza Hut. And
Yeah.
why that matters is because I guess in the year 2030, Taco Bell had won the fast food war, and like everybody eats at like fancy Taco Bell restaurants.
Right. Yeah.
Um, the movie kind of follows Sylvester Stallone, where he was trying to capture this criminal played by Wesley Snipes, and I guess he's blamed for collateral damage, and they put him on ice
Yep.
for I don't know 40 some odd years. And when Wesley Snipes' character gets woken up and begins destroying the city and everything like that, because I don't know, since they've been frozen, they've kind of like taken on a morally different time where like there's no more crime.
Right. Yeah, it's
So
just kind of almost like religious, but not like a real religion kind of running the greater Los Angeles area where they don't like swear and they don't, drink or smoke anymore and people don't have sex anymore cuz like they don't want to exchange fluids and get like STIs and things like AIDS and other contagious diseases. So it's very like kind of like neutered society.
yeah, so outside of just being like a fun action movie, there's actually a ton of comedy in it. It's really funny at
Yes.
times.
Mhm.
So it's one of those movies that like you look at it on paper and you're like, oh, this is gonna be dumb as hell, and yeah, it is kind of dumb as hell, but it's also very enjoyable.
It's true.
There's
It Yeah. It is fun.
you could just turn it on and kind of laugh at it and like see the action sequences and try to think like, oh, that's not nearly enough time for that society to change the way it did so radically, but you kind of just toss that aside and uh, enjoy the movie for what it is.
What'd you think of early Sandra Bullock performance in this one?
That was fun. She kind of plays like a ditzy character who's like she is obsessed with like the '90s, I guess, where Sylvester Stallone's character's supposed to be from,
Mm-hmm.
and she like collects all this memorabilia, and she's like, "Oh, I always wanted to know what it was like living in that era." And there was this thing, Evan, and I don't know. I'm sure you've thought about it, but there's like, I guess like when he wakes up, he's like looking for his wife and daughter,
Mm-hmm.
and they're like, "Oh, your wife passed away," and he's like, "Where's my daughter?" And they're like, "Oh, we could find her if you want to see her," and he's like, "No, I don't want to see her," and like,
Mm-hmm.
you're like, could Sandra Bullock be his daughter? Like, like
Ooh,
adding that like old boy kind of thing to it.
my God, I
Um,
hope not. No, that's one that's an interpretation I will not abide.
um, because like there's because like they kind of like toss that whole idea aside of ever finding his daughter. It's just like, oh, we talked about it, now we can move on.
Yeah. Oh man, I'm glad you had fun with Demolition Man. I love the art direction. I think the art direction is surprisingly strong for this like style of movie. Like they really thought through a lot of the gadgetry and all the different aspects of this society. I think that's all very fun.
And they
And
keep
Wesley
this
Snipes.
yeah, he's
Go ahead.
having a lot of fun, and but they keep like this running gag going, Evan, where like wherever they swear, there's a machine that like gives them like a ticket, but
Yeah.
these machines are like everywhere. So
Yeah.
so like you always hear them like going off whenever they swear.
Yep. Yeah. That's a lot of fun. Wesley Snipes is like just totally unhinged in this. He's having a blast just chewing the scenery, as is Dennis Leary anytime he shows up in this movie. It's very like stereotypical Dennis Leary, basically just cribbing from his stand up of that era. Anytime he's having dialogue, it's basically they probably just like, all right, Dennis, go do your thing.
Yeah, and so that was a Demolition Man, which pretty recently came out in a new 4K edition from Arrow Films here in the U.S. If you want to check that out.
Yeah, it looked like a fun set that I saw. You got all those like fold out things and whatever in your version?
Yeah, so one of the things that came with, and my wife Shannon had seen the movie before, so when like the stickers come out of the box and it's like three seashells, she was laughing. She's like, you don't get the joke, but this is so funny, and I'm like, okay, and then I watch the movie, of course, and I get it, but um, yeah, that's pretty clever.
Can I also just say I love that this is a movie that Shannon knew that you didn't know. I
Yes,
love that
yeah.
you guys have been together for a while. Like I think it's funny that this movie like never came up at any point that you watched it. So it's fun. I bet it's fun like discovering like a movie that one of you has seen, the other one hasn't seen, and gets the like enjoyment of that first time viewing.
Yeah, yeah, we've been together like almost 20 years now, and so it's like to see a movie that she was like, "Oh yeah, I'll watch this with you because I remember watching it," and I'm like, "Okay," we watched it together. So yeah, that was fun. She was like telling me it was like a family favorite or something.
Nice. Yeah, see, I liked that movie, but people in my family thought I was a weirdo for liking it.
You were gonna tell me about a Netflix film you watched, right?
Yeah, I'll keep it very quick. But
Yeah.
I caught up with Rebel Ridge finally, Jeremy Saulnier's movie that came out last year, and I'd only seen Green Room. That was the only other Jeremy Saulnier movie that I'd seen, and I loved it. I thought it was really tense and really well done, and so I was really excited to see this movie. And I have to say, it didn't disappoint. It is also very tense. It's this very kind of like tense crime drama that's just kind of like dialed up to 11, but it's also like about like corruption, like systemic corruption in this
Hmm.
like small southern like town in like the deep south. Like I think it's in Louisiana. And yeah, I think it's like just really well done. Like the kind of gist of it is you have this guy who is a former Marine, and he kind of like arrives in town to bail his cousin out of jail, and his cousin was like an informant in like an important case. And so like if he goes from, the local lockup to the county prison, like he's going to be attacked. And so he's like got this sense of urgency, like I need to get my cousin out of here. So he's like, comes in with this like bag of cash, and the cops assault him and steal his money, and like try basically use like legal means of like confiscating the money. And it's like it sets off this like crazy war between him and the cops, who are led by Don Johnson is the local police chief. And it's great. I thought it was just so well done, so tense, very, very like action packed in places. I think the lead performance by Aaron Pierre is like really fantastic. I think his action scenes, he's so confident in a lot of like kind of hand to hand combat. And yeah, I love that it's like this gritty crime movie that's also this really deep movie about and layered movie about corruption in like the police force and the local town, and like all this stuff I think does happen in real life. So it's kind of like it's not like a fictional corruption or like a movie corruption. It's like something that really gets you to care about this type of corruption that's like kind of disguised under legal auspices of like people, police like taking money from people and trying to say like, oh well, uh, this is a big amount of cash, so this is clearly a drug thing, so we're keeping this money, and like you can't
Hmm.
really fight it or get it back, so screw you, sorry.
No, you're one of many people who had positive things to say about this, and it's like it feels like the Netflix algorithm kind of like at the time it came out was sure, I promoted it pretty well, people found it, but since then it seems like it had its moment and it went away. But I'm
Mm-hmm.
glad you're bringing it up again because like I said, a lot of people I know who did have a chance to watch it when it came out did think pretty highly about it. So I'm glad to hear you
Yeah,
did too.
yeah, it's really solid. If you haven't seen it, I recommend it. It's like 2 hours, but it felt like a taut 2 hours. It didn't feel like it was overstaying its welcome. It felt like it earned its runtime.
Alrighty, well, that's another episode of the It's the Pictures podcast. Like I said earlier, Ev and I will be back probably next time talking about our Oscars thoughts, the results of the program, and whatever else we thought of the actual show itself, along with some other great news and features as well, like always. Evan, this was fun. I'm glad you were back on the show.
Yeah, me too. Glad to be back. And this is a fun conversation. I'm glad we got to talk about Joan Micklin Silver, and I had just as much fun talking about our movies we've been watching recently.
All right, everybody. Well, talk to you soon.